Hey guys, welcome back to another video on Prime Tennis YouTube. Today we're just going to be looking at some common mistakes that beginner tennis players make. And even, it's not just beginners, but, you see this even when you get to the intermediate levels and even the higher levels. Sometimes it's easy to let common mistakes, slip right past you. So that's just what we're going to be looking at today. Right, I have some highlights here, and so yeah, I just want to talk about that. The first thing that I want to talk about is having a weak second serve. I think this is something that comes with, I think, mainly practice. I think if you practice it more, then it's easier to be a lot more confident with your second serve. But I see it a lot where, a lot of the times people work on their first serve a lot and they go for a second serve. I don't know if they don't have a good second serve or, they get too nervous, too scared to miss. That's one thing that you don't want to do. You don't want to play afraid. You should really, really try and perfect, your second serve. I was watching the match that happened recently between Sabalenka and Kyrgios, and with his serves, they were just, like they weren't first serves. He wasn't going for huge aces all the time, right? But it was a lot of spin on him. Like you could tell he wasn't going for speed. He was going for placement. He was going for spin. That's the second serve. That's what you want. The way he was serving there, I mean, he was acing Sabalenka with those, but he was able to make, a weapon out of his second serve basically. And it really throws a lot of people off when you have a great second serve. Like me personally, I've had my fair share of like matches where they just have like a crazy kick serve. And, it's to the point where like I'd rather hit your first serve than your second serve, And I think a lot of people are scared, beginners are like scared to go after it like that because what if I miss? And that's where the practice comes in. When you start to get comfortable, with taking bigger shots like that, then that's, when it's able to become a weapon. So you really have to practice it in order to be able to hit that kick serve out wide, on your second serve and take a point like that, It's incredibly useful, and obviously, like it's situational. Like I saw this one interview that Fritz did. They were like, "Why were you serving your second serve so soft?" Right? He was like, my opponent was standing way, way far back, like 15 feet behind the baseline or whatever. And so he was like, okay, there's no point in me, going after it, trying to get something out of it. But if you have someone who's like being aggressive with your second serve, then you really have to do something about that. And the only thing that you really can do is just go after it a little bit more. Like that second serve that Sinner just hit here. See where Paul's hitting it? Like by his head. Like that's crazy kick, You do that, you master a serve like this, and it really, really, it really affects people, it gets on their nerves. It's really annoying to deal with. And it can be in some cases better than a first serve. So I think y'all should definitely work on that and check that out. Other thing that I want to point out is that you I see a lot of people have very late contacts when they're hitting, Like a lot of these things, they're so basic. They're things that, you hear from your coaches all the time, Hit the ball out in front, don't baby the ball, you know. But it really makes a difference, hitting the ball out in front. It's so simple. You hear it all the time. But it makes such a difference in like your accuracy, your power, and just how good the shot feels. You ever feel like, you're in the zone, you're in the mode, all your shots are going right? Usually, if you're in that situation, your contact is likely, in front, because it makes a huge difference. And if you can do it consistently, where it's like in the same spot every single time, the same distance from your body, you don't want to hit the ball too close, you don't want to reach out too far, but you get it right perfect where, it's just in front of you, and you're able to like shift your weight and your power into the shot. That's perfect. And I think the main reason why, beginners tend to struggle with this is simply because of footwork. You know, like that last shot that Tommy hit there. He just he wasn't there, right? So he steps, the ball's a little bit far from him. He has to reach, and then he misses, right? Footwork, a couple more steps here might have done the trick, you know? I mean, I don't know if he was under a lot of pressure here, but a lot of it is footwork. Yeah, here he kind of took like a little half second before taking that step. If you know, chopped his feet a little bit, took a couple more steps, he might have gotten to that, you know? And small things like that make a huge difference, right? You have to be able to, yeah, it's something, you know, like the serve thing. You have to work on it. You have to work on your footwork. But when you get that down, you can get a really good rhythm. It makes you hard to beat because you become consistent, right? Your game doesn't become solely based off of how good you feel. You know, there's a level of consistency to where, like, even if I'm playing bad, I know how to get to the ball. I know how to hit it out in front. I can do, you know, I can take these steps to create some form of consistency with my game to keep my shots in the court, right? And so that's something that you want to keep in mind as you play. Sorry, I had to drink some water. The other thing that I want to focus on is strategizing. You know, one thing that you want to do always is have a game plan. You know, when I was younger, I used to think, how can I have a game plan? You know, I'm playing all these small tournaments. I don't know who I'm playing. How can I have a game plan? You know, that's really a terrible excuse. You know, game plans, they're not something that's solely based off of your opponent. You know, it's not like, oh, he has a weak backhand. All right, I'm going to go to his backhand. You know, like I just said, you're not going to know that a lot of the time. So, game plan is mostly focused on yourself, right? Like, say, for example, you struggle with what I was just talking about, like hitting contact out in front. Then your game plan is just, all right, I'm going to move my feet a ton. I'm going to make sure I hit every ball at the right point of contact. That's it. That can be your game plan. That alone, it'll help you do so much. You know, what it does also is that it gives you this kind of it gives you leeway in the sense of like if you're doing bad, it's something that you can focus on. It takes your mind away from, oh my gosh, I just missed this shot. Oh my gosh, it's break point. Oh my gosh, it's set point. Whatever the case may be. Oh my gosh, I just hit that, you know, on forced error. You know, it takes your mind on like, okay, just hit the ball in front. Okay, just hit the ball in front. Even if that's not the problem, it distracts you from all the negative and all the emotional chaos that comes with the sport, you know, and it gives you some clarity. So you do always want to have a game plan. It makes a huge difference. And, you know, make sure it evolves through the match, right? If you're doing something and it's not working, obviously you don't want to keep doing it, right? You want to try different things. You want to try different things out, you know. And as you play your opponent, you know, then you can start to figure out, okay, you know, what can I do? Oh my gosh, I can't believe he missed that. That's gotta suck. But you know, you can figure out, all right, what can I do against them, right? All right, I'm hitting the ball in front. I'm consistent. Maybe they're struggling with consistency. Then your game plan becomes, all right, I'm doing consistent. I'm gonna keep focusing on this consistency thing that I'm doing, hitting the ball, getting the right contact, and that's all I'm gonna do, you know, because they can't keep the ball in for more than 5 shots, right? So you make every, you know, shot long, or you see that they don't have stamina, so you make every rally long. Or you see that, you know, they struggle with low balls, right? And you start incorporating slices, drop shots, and hitting the ball lower, right? Driving through it more. But, you know, that's as the match goes on. So there are two different kinds of ways of, you know, having like a game plan, right? And, you know, the last thing is just consistency, you know. It's number one thing in tennis. The person who wins is the one who's able to keep the ball in play the longest, right? So just be consistent. That's the main thing. You high top spin, deep if you can. The priority, two priorities in tennis, right? You want to try and get the ball in, and you want to make it hard for your opponent to get the ball in. The number one thing, you know, is obviously getting the ball in. That's always priority. right? You don't want to take a shot that you're going to miss or that you're not confident on or that you're going too much. Top priority is just to stay consistent, step back, reset the point, roll the ball if you have to, whatever it takes. It's that kind of consistency that wins matches a lot of the time. It's not always just these huge plays like in these highlights. But, I hope you guys get the gist of it. That's the, kind of the point I'm trying to get at is just it's a lot of these simple things that really, can make a difference, especially at the beginner level. Like at the beginner level, man, if you do, some of this stuff, like it makes a huge difference. Like it elevates your game so much because that's literally what the pros base their entire game off of. You watch them and you see that it's like the chances that they take, the shots that they take, it's all calculated. And, they try to stay calm so they can stay consistent. Like all these things, it's all incorporated, into their mental and their physical. But that's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll catch you on the next one.